Alright guys, this is a really, really funny video to me. Because if you've been paying attention to the realm of gaming lately, then you'll have noticed that the most effective right-wing anti-woke fandom grifters are the ones that can most effectively toe the line between pandering to a full-on far-right Nazi audience that is just enraged by the presence of minorities in media, and the more normie audience that's just upset with the state of the gaming industry, which there's plenty of things to be upset about, by the way, and are trying to appeal to that existing audience that has genuine grievances most of the time as well. Those tend to be the most successful figures. People like Geeks and... well, not even Geeks and Gamers. I would say like Nerdrotic and The Quartering are really good examples of creators who do this. Critical Drinker is another good example. They really do ride the line and try not to outright say, ooh, woke bad, too explicitly. Notably, like Critical Drinker, who we've talked about a fair amount lately, likes to use the term the message when referring to wokeness, his own, like, talking point. Hey, what's Smaller doing there? Anyway, now here's the thing. If you know anything about the state of the gaming community online right now, you know that we're kind of teetering in this very bizarre area, where on one side, you've got the normies who are genuinely upset with the state of the gaming industry, who feel that, well, let me give a few examples. The tendency for games to release in an unfinished state, requiring multiple patches after release to make them even close to playable, even though you paid full price on release, or even pre-ordered the game, hoping to be able to play it early. What's the sound in the background? There's just some people around the street doing some, like, yard work. Sorry about that, guys. I do have a limiter on my mic, but it's still getting through, I guess. Anyway, that's been a big problem with gaming lately. Games as a service has been a big problem. You know about the Stop Killing Games initiative? The whole idea of this is that online games, always online games, whenever they lose support from the publisher or company that produced them, they do end up tending to shut down. And if you're someone who's, say, bought a ton of cosmetics in this game, paid for a subscription for the game for years, you've basically lost all of the value of the money you might have spent years and years and years giving to this company, all because they've decided to no longer support it anymore. How many old games that you enjoy can you think of that lost support because they were always online or a game as a service that you basically just can't play the same way anymore, or at all? The idea of Stop Killing Games is to make it so that, like any content that is paid for, that anyone ever has paid for, even if companies are no longer going to support it officially, they would have to provide means for players to host servers or host it and continue being able to play the game themselves. Because if they're not going to provide the service that people paid for, then the people who paid for it should be able to themselves. Very good movement, but once again, another example of a very common trend and a very big downside with it. There's a reason why so many gamers are pissed off by these always online games as services. And I could frankly probably just go on for like 12 more hours listing problems with the gaming industry in its current state, though I do want to clarify at the same time, I would actually argue the gaming industry is in one of the best states it's ever been in. And that might sound crazy to you, but when you really look at the history of gaming, like, man, it's only been the last 10 years that we've really started cooking with some of, like the best games in history have released in the last, like, 15 to 16 years. A lot, like a high quantity of the best games ever have released recently in the grand scheme of gaming's lifetime. So it's very easy to think about it and say, oh, gaming's in a really bad spot. Look how many bad games there are. Look how many bad practices are becoming huge in the gaming industry. But at the same time, the gaming industry is the biggest it's ever been. It is the biggest entertainment industry in the entire world now. It mogs the fuck out of books, out of movies, out of TV, out of everything. It mogs the Super Bowl, the gaming industry. Like, the sports industry gets mogged by gaming. It is the biggest industry, and gaming is continuing to get bigger. And as gaming as an industry gets bigger, more competitors are going to enter the market. And with more companies, more game developers, with the indie market getting so big, inevitably, there's going to be some stinkers. There's going to be some bad practices cropping up. The indie market getting so big has resulted in big scams taking off in the gaming industry. This is a really bad problem. Think of the day before. I won't explain what it was. It was very hype if it was real, but it wasn't. It ended up being a big scam. That a company based out of Siberia, I believe, ran to try and it literally became the most wishlisted game on Steam and ended up being a fake game so bad that Steam had to take it off of the Steam Workshop or the Steam Marketplace and refund everyone who bought the game. That's the shit coming out of the explosion of the indie game industry, allowing for randoms to come along, promise something that's impossible, and scam users, and even get to the top of the Steam wishlist page with a fake product. There's so much I could complain about with the gaming industry. And grifters, knowing that a lot of gamers are in a state where they're quite upset, but at the same time, while they are upset over valid things, they're also getting older. How many videos have you seen lately that have a title along the lines of why gaming isn't fun anymore? The fact is that Gen Z, like the generation that probably spent the most time on video games growing up in all of human history, is getting old. You know, like if you're Gen Z, you're somewhere in your 20s at this point, most likely. Maybe older. And naturally, a lot of people over time are going to lose interest in video games. More likely than not, their lives are just going to get busier and more hectic, and they're not going to be able to relax and play video games. That's been my biggest holdback to enjoying games as much as I used to when I was a kid, is that I'll sit down and I'll want to just relax and lose myself in a game, but I can't stop thinking about everything I need to do. I can't stop thinking about the fact, oh, I gotta stream in a few hours, or I gotta stream tomorrow if it's my day off, right? Like, I can't just relax and stop thinking about what I have to do in the future, because I'm just stressed that I have to do something, right? And that's all of adulthood. Adulthood is just that nonstop. So it's hard to get immersed and lost in a game when you've got so much stuff going on that you can't even calm down because your brain won't stop thinking about it. And that's something very common I've found in a lot of my friends as I've gotten older, is that everybody, including me, seems to be dealing with that same problem, and it makes pastimes like gaming seem like a waste of time, feel like a waste of time, even as you're sitting down and doing it and perhaps even enjoying it. And so a lot of Gen Z is going through this era where they want to love video games. They want to play the new games. They want to be a part of the gaming community. But every time they sit down to play a game, they just can't muscle their way through it because they're growing out of it. It's not for them anymore. And instead of recognizing this and moving on and finding other things to occupy their time with, a lot of these dudes are claiming there's something wrong with gaming as an industry. And this is a lot of the emotional reaction you'll notice that has motivated a lot of the right-wing anti-fan grifters, is this idea that they're getting older and thus less into gaming must mean the industry is getting worse and video games have changed. Well, that's just not the case. In reality, most of them are just getting older, and times are changing. I promise you, the kids who are the age that we all were when we think back to the golden age of gaming, they're having as much fun as we were back then, right now, on Fortnite and Minecraft and Roblox and whatever games are currently big right now. They're Fall Guys, they're having memories that in 10, 15 years, they're going to be making nostalgic posts about how, man, gaming has fallen. Remember Fall Guys? Remember growing up on Fortnite? It's going to happen all over again. You know, it's a generational thing, but with gaming. That said, though, this sentiment has allowed gaming critique online to blow up massively. And some of the most successful game critics are the line-walking, conservative grifter types. And the other half are genuine normies who have critiques of the gaming industry, perhaps even get a little bothered by what they would consider wokeness in gaming. But overall, they're generally quite genuine and sincere gamers that just want to see games be good. Now, normally, it would be in the prerogative of the anti-woke fandom grifters to be as friendly with the normie creators who are just trying to make game reviews as possible, especially if they're larger YouTubers who have a broad appeal. And that is why we're covering this video, because that is not what happens here. An anti-woke YouTuber named Andy Pants Gaming made a video called Woke YouTubers, and in the thumbnail, one of the people in the thumbnail is the fucking Act Man, who I wouldn't exactly call him conservative, far-right, or like a anti-woke type. He's certainly not like a woke or progressive. He's like as normie as it gets. Like, he is, like, if anything, he is certainly leaning more on the right side of the gaming discussion than on the left side, that's for sure. And this Andy Pants Gaming guy, he's got 159,000 subscribers. If you want to look at the kind of stuff this dude makes, what his channel is like, it's really nothing special. Like, what do you guys expect? Just, it keeps getting worse. Black person in the thumbnail. The pussification of video games. World War II game everyone forgot. Single player, like, fraction of the views of any of his videos he makes about politics. Are gamers homophobic? Is this DEI the game because black people and it says gay shit? Yeah, so this guy is obviously more in line with, like, Synthetic Man. Quite a bit more far right than your average anti-woke grifter. Not as capable of walking that line to keep the normies happy. In fact, the description of this video is time to expose these cucks. And, I'm surprised to say that the chuds in the replies are, now, to be fair, all of the top replies to this, all the top comments, are his hearted comments, the ones he hearted that are all saying things like, the Act Man is going to have to ask his wife's boyfriend if he can stay up late to make a response. It's like, dude. Are they really going to attack the fucking Act Man? I have no problem with it. I'm not here to, like, what's the word for it? Like, dick guard the Act Man? I highly encourage they continue with this line of action. The Act Man is a big, well-liked YouTuber who has a general positive opinion in the minds of a lot of these guys' audiences and the audience they're trying to target. So coming out against a popular figure like him, go on ahead. See how that works out for you and your entire clique of grifter YouTubers. Keep this shit up. I love this. Complete self-destructive behavior.
So with every new video I make now, I'm like, probably going to get canceled after this one. Oh well, here we go. So in this video, I want to talk about a disturbing pattern that I've begun to notice in some of our most celebrated YouTubers.
Oh, Bellular too is woke
like
now?
Many people, was at one time a fan of the Act Man, Skill Up, and Bellular. But as time has gone on, I've noticed a pretty upsetting trend in the content of all three of these guys. Have you noticed these three creators never call anything woke? And if they do,
you know who else doesn't ever call anything woke? Mahler. The Critical Drinker. I could probably think of a few other anti-woke content creators that don't ever explicitly call anything woke. Now, to be fair, these creators, as far as I know, are not, like, mentally ill and thus completely bogged down with politics. This is the difference here. The Act Man, Bellular, and I don't know the other guy, I'm sorry. These are normal dudes who just like to game, and when they say they don't want politics in games, they actually mean it. Like, when they talk about not wanting politics in games, they're talking about, like, actual cases where it was very clear that there's, like, a on-the-nose weird moment in a game. Have you ever, like, seen a piece of media where you're like, oh, man, the writers tried to make, like, a progressive joke there, and they flopped it hard, you know? I think a good example was in Gen V, the line about PewDiePie being a Nazi. It's like, dude, that bridge moment happened like 8 years ago. Is there? And it's like the second joke they made about PewDiePie being a Nazi in The Boys or its spinoffs. And it's like, man, there must be a writer that hates PewDiePie. You'll see something like that and be like, okay, well, I can understand people being upset by something like that. That's a bit cringe. Like an attempt at like a real life reference that just completely bombs. That's the kind of shit that these dudes are complaining about when they complain about politics and gaming. They aren't getting mad about minorities being like the main character of a game or gay people existing. They actually buy into the narrative of the, oh, there's political agenda being introduced. And so these guys not actually being obsessed with the idea of minorities in media, but instead being at worst, buying into the dog whistling is not enough for this guy. And he's calling them out for not being far right enough. Xander Hall, they didn't like part of Cyberpunk 2077 because your decision helps to change the politics in the game. I haven't played the game, so I don't try not to spoil, but that's as vague as I guess you can really get, or as specific as you can get without spoiling, so I guess.
They're making fun of you for using the term.
I'm guessing, I think Skill Up is actually progressive, by the way. I think I've seen videos from that channel. It just doesn't give the impression of, like, a channel trying to get big off of, like, hate, right? Never talk about the uglification of women in games. Remember, this is one of those people who's kind of in that Grums category where he's part of the why is every woman in video games not a doll for me to jack off to? What the fuck?
Have you noticed they never talk about the obvious uglification of women in games the past few years? Have you noticed they never talk about the LGBTQ?
They never talk about how games are gay as hell now. I just think they don't hate gay people. Also, games aren't really, like, that gay. I guess you could say they're gay more now in comparison to how they used to be when gay people were less accepted. But, like, you could say the same thing about movies and TV back during, like, the 1970s. Have you ever noticed that, like, movies and TV it's black as hell now? There's so many black people in movies and TV now, post, like, the 60s and stuff, like, as TV got to be less racist with its casting. Less racist with its casting. Like, the same line of logic obviously applies. Yes, believe it or not, media gets to be more representative as society gets less bigoted. And these guys aren't bigots. So they're not upset. These guys actually are not obsessed with politics. They're actually not into politics. They don't get upset when they see minorities in media, and they don't get upset when there's not minorities in media. They are genuine grillers, these guys, and that's pissed this dude off. Amazing.
QI_7 community and how they basically run video games right now. Have you noticed they never...
Wait, did he just JQ there? Hold on. I wasn't paying attention. I think I just heard him JQ. I think he just did echo sign.
They never talk about the LGBTQI_7 community and how they...
okay, never mind. Okay, sorry. I thought I heard him say echo sign. My bad.
Basically run video games right now. Have you noticed they never point out obvious racism against white people? In fact...
I'm pretty sure I've heard Actman at one point, at least, talk about racism against white people being cringe. Guys, there's not a racist agenda against white people. Gay people and black people and stuff existing in media is not racist against white people. That's not... You know what's so funny to me is that these guys spend half their time complaining about how minorities say things are racist, and then spend the other half their time complaining about how everything is racist against white people. Like, everything they accuse minorities of being, like, oh, you call everything racist, you just want to be a victim. Yeah, that's literally them. They call everything that they find even marginally representative or progressive racist against white people, and try to play the victim as if they've been offended. It's like, what? You just made fun of the left and minorities for doing that 5 minutes ago, dude.
In fact, they'll often say lies like racism against white people isn't possible. Have you noticed none of them ever talk...
None of these people have said racism against white people isn't possible, and most of the online left even, I don't think, believe... I don't even think they believe that racism against white people isn't possible. When people talk about racism, they may be talking about a bunch of different things. When you think racism, what probably comes to mind, if you're like a bit of a normie, is like Cletus down the road having like a Confederate flag and yelling the N-word at any black person that goes past and saying, "Stay off my land, get out of my town." Like, that's an easy, okay, the most extreme, picture, textbook definition of a racist you can think of, right? But when, leftists typically refer to racism, there's usually a much broader reference, and it might even be being used kind of just as a catch-all for a more specific kind, right? So generally, when racism is talked about by the left, by leftists, we're usually talking about systemic racism. Like the kind of racism that actually has backing from large power systems that you can't, as a normal person, have any sway over outside of voting, but otherwise you're at the behest of that. So the criminal justice system, a system that you really have no power to avoid or not be a part of if it's unfair to you. It looms over you. It will affect you. If the criminal justice system is racist and you get stopped by a cop and you're black, it's going to be a problem. You don't get to decide not to be a part of the people affected, right? And so that's generally what the left is referring to, and that is something that doesn't really exist for white people. There doesn't really seem to be any instances of a systemic racism, and where it has been claimed to exist, I should say, it's usually hey, look, this college has affirmative action. Isn't that systemic racism against white people? Okay, man. All right, if that's your example, We're talking about like the incarceration rates, the recidivism rates in prisons. We're talking about like general average income and access to education and housing quality. And you're talking about like affirmative action in colleges. You know, it's like, all right, there's clearly a big difference here when we talk about the level of racism that white people face and non-white people face, just in general.
Talk about the trillions of dollars companies make by bumping up their DEI and ESG initiatives and by putting evil woke nonsense in their games?
Evil woke nonsense. Remember when these guys were saying that their political side was like the taboo political beliefs that you weren't allowed to have, and that we need to protect free speech so that people could be allowed to criticize like progressive ideology, and now it's like this is evil wokeness being put into games and it has to be stopped. These people cannot be allowed to have their politics in games. Only the right is allowed to have its politics in games. Yeah, boys club shit.
Have you noticed they never talk about the complete removal of masculinity from video games? So why?
Where? Please, tell me where. There being games that star female main characters does not mean masculinity is going away. He remembers what like one of the biggest games in the last few years was, right? Like the game where you play as like a big shirtless buff guy who like punches gods to death while running around in the snow and ripping things apart and yelling. Like his power up is called Spartan Rage, where he just yells, lights on fire, becomes like vascular as fuck, and then starts punching things to death. Like video games have not gotten less masculine, bro. Let's be real, okay? Like video games are still predominantly a boys club. The most popular games that are out right now tend to be targeted at a male audience and have like heavy, gritty action. Like, let's be real here. Games are not getting less masculine. Like, come on.
Why are these three dudes intentionally avoiding calling out wokeness in games? To put it simply, it's because these dudes are cucks. They're pussies.
No, keep doing this, please. See how it goes.
All three of these guys are definitely voting for Kamala Harris in November. I heard Endymion call him Ack Ma'am one time, and the label definitely fits. So those are the surface level reasons. I'll get to the deeper reasons in a minute. I just watched an entire Act Man video about Concord. I know, it was painful. It contained...
Believe it or not, Act Man made a video about how Concord failed, and it was about how it was badly advertised, poorly made, uninspired, and people had no interest, and explained how the game failed. But because he didn't say it was because of minorities and a diverse cast, he needs to be called out and destroyed. He's a cuck. He didn't claim the game failed because people don't like minorities, and that's why they refuse to play it. And that's clearly why the game failed, the only reason it failed. And refusing to acknowledge that means that you're lying. You're a paid cuck. You're a paid shill by Activision or Sony or whatever.
A lot of tired millennial jokes. I'm a millennial, by the way. Takes one to know one. He talked a lot about low player numbers. He talked about how much money it wasted. And then when he gets to the part where you're supposed to talk about why the game failed, he just says, bad gameplay, bad character design. Why do you suppose Ackmam doesn't talk about the fact that Concord has 3 black females in it and not a single white man?
I think because he's not obsessed with race and identity politics, probably. Like, I think it's because the dude can look at a game and recognize its faults without needing to obsess with identity politics. You know, that shit that you guys claim the left can't stop talking about.
Why do you suppose he doesn't talk about all the LGBTQ plus activists on Twitter who worked on the game?
Because he doesn't care about identity politics and also does not want to encourage his audience to harass game developers for being gay. That's literally his argument there, by the way. Why is he not goading his audience into harassing the LGBT game developers? Like, why is he not shitting on the devs of the game?
Interesting. He even at one point in the video makes fun of the idea that bigger breasts would save this game.
Yes, because the game is bad. It's not bad because of progressivism or diversity. If the game had the most do people remember? People remember when Apex Legends came out, right? And the quartering got absolutely slaughtered online for like months straight back in 2019 because he complained about the game not having any straight male characters and having an agender. He complained about how diverse the cast was and how the game was successful despite that and how that's like bad. and it's showing how gamers are getting woke. Because at the time, the narrative was that these popular games are woke, and that's the problem. Now the narrative is that games that are woke cannot succeed. And so he's like, okay, well, because they want to push the idea that they are winning, right? They're winning this culture war. Back then, the idea was that they were losing the culture war, and you need to watch the quartering in order to help win it, right? God, the idea that that diversity has any effect whatsoever on a video game succeeding is hilarious. Games are fun or they are not, and that determines whether or not they succeed. If they're well optimized, they run well, they're well advertised, so people know where to get it, and their audience finds it, it's going to do well. If it is not those things, it's going to fail. Has nothing to do with diversity or whatever. The biggest MMO in the world right now is extremely diverse. You know, like some of the biggest games. Look at Fortnite. One of the most diverse games there is in terms of the options you can go for. One of the things that Fortnite gets praised for, in fact, I don't know if you've noticed, it's like one of the only games to actually do black hairstyles right. I don't know if you've noticed that, but games famously, despite all this narrative about how games are woke now, it's very hollow. Who's noticed that every single black character in games these days almost seems to have the the swept to the side locks Killmonger in that one portion of Black Panther. It's been a big meme that black gamers have called out for a while now. Then you look at Fortnite, and even original characters in Fortnite have actual real and interesting and varied hairstyles that are black characters. It's way better. Fortnite is an extremely diverse game and one of the most popular games there is. The idea that diversity kills games or precludes it from success is deranged. This guy's entire premise is deranged. And he's mad that these guys aren't obsessed with identity politics like he is.
I mean, it wouldn't hurt, dude. Is that idea so ridiculous? You'll notice similar things when watching.
Is Actman gay? Is Actman gay? Jesus Christ. Oh my God. Aren't these the dudes who think you're gay if you like women?
Up in Bellular analyze Concord. Why do you suppose these guys spend 30 minutes talking about the gameplay and not 1 minute talking about how a huge reason the game failed is because the characters are fat and ugly?
Why do you suppose these gaming content creators spend their time talking about the gameplay? And not even a minute on talking about the characters being fat and ugly, which is actually what ruined the game. A real point made by a serious person.
So I used to think these three guys were just missing details. I used to give them the benefit of the doubt. But as I've watched their content on a consistent basis, I've realized these dudes are so deep in the gay communist agenda, they can't even criticize it anymore. Basically,
dude, I need more of this, guys. I need these people to continue to attack normies for not being obsessed with identity politics enough to complain about minorities in games. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. These retards are finally letting the mask slip and admitting that they are racist. And they're not only doing that, they're attacking normies who would otherwise defend them. The Actman would defend this guy a week ago, I bet. I guarantee you, the Actman would align with this guy before he'd align with me 1 week ago. And this guy has decided to call him out and call these YouTubers out because they are not as racist, or not racist like he is. But they would still have a problem with, I'm sure, with the idea of wokeness in games if they were asked. It's just not their obsession. They're just gamers. Oh my gosh. Are you weird champing me because I said retard? Oof. You're not going to like it here.
Basically, you've got incredibly evil companies like Activision who support pedophilia and Satanism and push...
Man. This guy's living in 1980.
DEI initiatives and also spend billions and billions of dollars a year on marketing. Now, do you think they're going to give a YouTuber like me who calls them out on a consistent basis a sneak peek and a tour of the studio? Of course not. They want a shill. They want an empty shill like Skill.
Activision needs a cuck. They need a mouthpiece for their propaganda. Do you want to know what this video actually is? An attempt to convince fans of a much larger YouTuber, the Actman, that they can't trust these YouTubers because they're bought out by the wokeness, and only Andy Pants Gaming is willing to call this out. Only he isn't bought out. If you want real game reviews that aren't bought out by Activision, you got to go to him. If you know, Andy Pants Gaming, who spends no time whatsoever talking about the gameplay of a game, because obviously that could have no effect on its success. It must just be the political implications of the game.
Up who won't bring up the woke stuff. They want somebody who will be an empty mouthpiece and they can just pour talking points into them.
Mind you, he's claiming that these guys are cucks for a game company whose games they have been making videos about being bad for years. But the reason why they're bought out by Activision is that they're not calling out the wokeness. They only call out how bad the gameplay is and tell people not to buy the game and that it's bad, for reasons unrelated to politics. So they must be bought out by Activision. They must be cucks to Activision because of that. Like, what? That makes no sense.
While they regurgitate them out. Actman is indeed good at playing an act. He's good at appearing natural and looking like he's riffing. The reality is he's reading a careful script that has definitely been run by his handlers at Activision and Bungie and other DEI departments.
Oh my god, yes! More of this! More of this, please! Please make up it psychotic. Oh my god, the Actman's definitely gonna respond to this, because this got some, like, decent viewership, and it's unhinged. He's literally, like, alleging that Activision has handlers that control the Actman, and I guess they told him to make a video about how awful Concord was, and that it failed because it sucked, and had bad gameplay. They paid him to just, like, not talk about the wokeness, I guess. He's responded to this on Twitter, I think. I want to see what Actman's response was. I hope he makes a video. I hope he starts to recognize that these people are the actual unhinged weirdos, not, like, progressive journalists that sometimes say, hey, this game would be better if it had some better representation.
Again, notice these guys never mention BlackRock, ESG, or any of the gay, communist, globalist...
Because... you're insane if you think that investment firms that hold on to shares of companies and try to increase their bottom line by improving their investments is communism. Believe it or not, the stock market is not communism. The stock market might be as opposite of communism as it gets. It's actually so crazy to me that these people have taken advantage of the lack of knowledge of what communism even is so far that they call the stock market communism. I really need you guys to think about that for a moment. That's what they're doing. They're calling the stock exchange and the practice of companies buying shares in other companies and trying to make a profit communism. The most capitalist thing there is, holding assets so they accrue value, they are calling communism. These people recognize the evils of capitalism so much they have to call it communism to keep people on board with it.
This cancer that these companies push. I found this article on screen here about Bellular that was definitely interesting. It basically...
From where? From a site called Wolf's Head Online, Stop Censorship, with a AI-generated gold-tooth Bellular as the main thing. Holly Longdale interview confirms why Access journalist Michael Bell refuses to speak out about DEI propaganda. I'm going to guess there's a Christ is King ad on the side of the screen. I'm going to guess that this site might have some biases. Culture, faith, MMORPGs, music, other writing, politics, reviews, satire, technology, and video games. I'm guessing the satire section is just all them JQing. Like, that's their, like, the satire, quote-unquote, section.
It basically talks about how he's been given insider interviews and gets to see deep, behind-the-scenes information about upcoming World of Warcraft games. But part of his ability to get that info...
Upcoming World of Warcraft games. Good one, Mr. Gaming YouTuber.
...is to continue to be a corporate shill for Activision and parrot the talking points they want. He's a good little sheep and never asks about DEI or ESG. This is why even if they wanted to, Actman, Bellular, and SkillUp can't talk about the woke agenda. These low-T beta males have been bought and sold by Activision.
I need to see what this guy looks like IRL. Hold on. You're not going to believe this. This guy looks like fucking Thought Slime. This guy looks like fucking Thought Slime. This is the guy behind the camera, and you can tell from his proportions and like the shot we get here. He's like 5'4", dude. Have you ever seen a more obviously 5'4" man? Like, he's got Hobbit proportions. Look at him. Oh my god. Low T, short, and insecure. You can tell, like, look at the hat too. You know this guy's not got a hairline to be proud of as well. Okay, yeah. I already knew because he was, like, levying allegations of, like, soy beta male at a guy who looks like he probably lifts every other day. Like, I don't know. The Act Man looks like a guy who goes to the gym. Like, he's not... There's nothing soy beta, like, about this guy's vibe, aesthetic, or look. So when someone throws that out of nowhere, you gotta look up. You gotta look up what he looks like, because you know you're dealing with someone who is projecting.
Sony, by Microsoft, by Bungie.
Listen, you're a short king, SSW Braydu, but this guy is clearly so insecure, he has to use things he's insecure about as insults, and I picked up on it, and I had to know. I had to Google, and I was right.
Sure, they can have complaints about gameplay and too many microtransactions and stuff like that, but...
You know, the actual things that affect your wallet and the quality of the game and whether or not you might want to buy it, the real things that gamers are concerned about, you know, the action, you know, not what gaming content creators should actually be focusing on, not your insane anti-minority conspiracy theory about the Jews controlling Hollywood and gaming.
But you will never hear these guys complaining about why women are so ugly in video games now, because they're good corporate servants. One mistake I think a lot of people make is thinking that just because these guys will say a game is terrible, they must be objective. Not so. A journalist or content...
You see, they were paid out by the companies that made these games to say they're bad, but to ignore the wokeness. Where was the wokeness in the Lord of the Rings Gollum game, by the way?
Creator is not judged by their ability to say a game is bad. They're judged by their ability to be able to breach any topic. The fact that these creators have never talked about DEI, ESG, and the woke propaganda indicates to me either A, they're censoring their real thoughts, or B, these guys are the propaganda machines themselves.
What I love about this as well is the idea that, let's say hypothetically, Actman, Bellular, they don't want to call out this woke stuff. Maybe they just don't agree with the idea that wokeness is a problem. Maybe they even like wokeness. But this would mean they have to be bought out shills, because no one could possibly naturally, organically arrive at a worldview that's different from his. Anyone who thinks differently than his was paid by a company and is a mouthpiece for a company or a cuck or in general, just evil. And implicitly should not deserve to exist or be allowed to hold those positions, because how dare anyone disagree with the idea that minorities in games is evil and a force that we have to stop? How dare anyone disagree with Andy Pants Gaming? How dare there be disagreement in politics? At the end of the day, what I love about this is Andy Pants Gaming comes off as like an extremely triggered SJW cuck here. And if you sort by newest, you get comments like, they're not woke, they're just normal. You're the crazy one seeing wokeness everywhere. It's also funny that you didn't also call out Charlie for that, because he also never uses the term woke and he doesn't follow the same script you do when talking about what's wrong with video games. So what gives? You're a clown. Okay, but rush releases, shitty gameplay, and microtransactions are still the biggest reason why gaming sucks now. Starfield didn't suck because of some dumb pronoun options. It sucked because it had vapid gameplay, large empty worlds, and a million loading screens. Holy crap, bro. I'm so happy that in Russia we don't have any of the gay-ass woke shit. There you go. There's a comment that's most recent and wasn't boosted by him that's in favor of him. Man, I'm so glad in Russia we don't have any of this woke shit, you know? We criminalize being gay. Man, oh, thank God. You know, true freedom over in Russia. Anyway, guys, if you enjoyed this video, I really do appreciate you sticking around. Consider dropping a like. It really helps a lot. No matter when, where, or what you're watching from me, every thumbs up boosts my content in the algorithm and helps to make sure that more people see me. So I really do appreciate it. And of course, if you haven't already, consider following my social medias linked down below, commenting down below, subscribing, and ringing the bell icon. And of course, if you haven't already, make sure to join my fan Discord. It's the main hub of my community and fan base. Totally free to join. I also host game events, call-in streams, and watch parties there. And on top of all that, I announce all my new uploads and streams, so no matter what, you'll never miss a new upload if you're a member of my server, even if YouTube bugs out on you. And of course, if you've got the money for it and you feel like it, consider donating, subscribing, or gifting a sub on my website, xanderhall.com/live, or supporting me through YouTube, Twitch, Streamlabs, StreamElements, Patreon, or buying merch at the Streamlabs link down below. But regardless of how you support me, I really do appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching, and have a good one.